In a world that moves too quickly, there's a refuge for the sane. When the load becomes too heavy, all your day is filled with pain.
We spent a couple of days in Middlewich doing laundry, stocking up on groceries and getting the boat all tickety-boo. Around 3 p.m. on the 18th, Len arrived with Bob and Annette Emerson from Tempe, Arizona. As the borrowed photo states, our first guests from the USA. The sun shone as they stood on the canal bridge and looked down on a gleaming 60-foot narrowboat that was to be their home for the next 7 days. Len's daughter Karen and her boyfriend Jonathan stopped by to pick up Len's car so he could join us for a few days. We left Middlewich the following morning and took a right turn onto the Middlewich branch of the Shropshire Union Canal, and for the first time on our cruise got to experience going through narrow locks. We quickly found out that we had to lift those fenders up. After 10 miles we reached Barbridge Junction, where we made a right turn onto the main line of the Shroppie and moored up at Calverley for the night. Rain, rain, rain as we headed up the Shroppie. We stopped at Mrs. Harden's Glory Hole in Beeston, where Pat bought an enamel teapot for £6.99 and Bob and Annette bought us a watering can, both nicely painted with roses and castles. Len had to leave us at Chester because he'd received the sad news that his mother was seriously ill. The following morning there was a tapping on our door as we were eating breakfast. It was Eleanor and Virginia Simmons from Granada Hills, California. After a quick tour around the boat, the 6 of us went off to explore the historic city of Chester. We spent the morning walking around the city and visited the cathedral, and Pat got a haircut for £10. The weather had changed and it turned into a gorgeous evening, so we started heading back down the Shroppie. What a difference the weather makes. The countryside looked totally different from the way it did on the way up. We cruised until around 8:30 and called it quits at Bridge 112. That's Dutton's Bridge. It was very shallow and we had to use our gangplank to get onto the bank. Everyone was pretty tired, and in fact Bob and I fell asleep while the girls were doing the dishes. It was another gorgeous morning on Saturday as we cruised 1 mile down to Bait Mill Bridge. Bob, Annette and I walked up to the ruins of the 12th century Beeston Castle. It's situated on top of a steep hill that has panoramic views of the Cheshire Plains below. From Barbridge Junction to Chester and back to the junction, Bob and Annette got to experience going through double-wide locks. This one is Beeston Stone Lock, and it has a quaint circular lengthman's hut that has survived from when the canal was built in 1779. The lock before this one, Beeston Iron Lock, was built by Thomas Telford in 1828. It was his solution to resolving the unstable conditions of the quicksands below it. Today the sides have caved in and it can only accommodate 1 boat at a time. On our way down to Hurlston Junction, Annette enjoyed a couple of Black Russians. And yes, Annette, they do have some booze in them. At the junction we made a right turn onto the Llangollen Canal and ascended the 4-lock Hurlston Flight. We were back to narrow locks. We tied off for the night soon after going through the top lock near Bank Farm. Oh no, what's going on here? A hairbrush had found its way down the sinkhole and Bob and I are trying to rescue it. The sun continued to shine on us Sunday morning as we quickly learned how to get through lift bridges safely. I believe the one we are approaching is Wrenbury Church lift bridge. The bridge is raised by pulling down on a chain. It is counterbalanced with a heavy weight. It's always a good idea to chain the balance down or at least sit on it. I'm sure Bob has this one chained. One thing to watch out for is the chimney, and Pat's okay on this one because the raised bridge is on the opposite side to our chimney. Well done, crew, we made it through safely. Ken and Margaret Grew from Vancouver, Washington State met us at Wrenbury. They joined us for lunch at the Dusty Miller. Margaret was visiting her brother in Preston and had been trying to reach us to arrange a get-together, but she had the wrong phone number. We spent a couple of hours visiting with Ken and Margaret and showed them around the boat. After they left, I decided to do one of my least favourite chores, changing the oil. After I got it completed, we continued on our journey up to Marbury. After leaving Wrenbury, we got our first introduction to the weirs and fierce bywashes on some of the Llangollen locks. Here we are approaching one of them, the Grinley Brook Flight with its staircase locks. We arrived at Whitchurch on the Monday. This is the impressive church of St. Altman, built in 1712. We walked around town for a while, had lunch at the Victoria Hotel, picked up some groceries and checked out tomorrow's train times. Bob and Annette decided they just had to set foot in Wales, so we went on an afternoon and late evening cruise. Did I say late evening? More like midnight cruise. They did make it into Wales by walking west from Bridge 39, or maybe it was 40, and getting back on at Platt Lane. Pat and Annette went into the Wagoneer to call Len to see how his mum was doing, while Bob and I went up to the Priest Junction to turn around. In hindsight, a nighttime cruise on the Llangollen is not the smartest thing to do. Fortunately, there were no locks, but as there was no moon, it was difficult to negotiate through the lift bridges in total darkness. We didn't make it back to Whitchurch until midnight, and then it was time to have dinner. Bob and Annette bid us farewell on Tuesday the 25th of May and headed off to the railway station to catch their 9:05 train to Crewe and continue their vacation. Annette had read in a travel magazine that it was a good idea to tie bells on your luggage to warn you if someone was trying to steal it. We could hear the sound of jingling bells as they made their way across the field.